Did everybody have a chance to look at board docs and our agenda for this evening? Good. So I need to add recommended action to 7.4, the Lansing petition and agreement for purposes of creating an improvement district, which will be under item 7.4 at the end of the meeting. As well as approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Any comment or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Good. So, Danielle, anybody want to speak from the audience? Megan, do you have some pretty pictures for us? This is a new person.
Hey, we should introduce you, Pat. This is Pat. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
I'm Pat Tolan with McPherson Contractors. I'll be the project on the job. We're trying to come and update you every board meeting, every other board meeting.
Good.
Oh, we see Pat every day.
Good.
That's good.
That's good.
Oh, just wanted to give you a short update. I don't have any picture slides for you or anything today. I brought a beautiful model.
Okay.
But don't touch it, anybody, because I got in trouble for touching it.
Just a quick update. As planned, we are on schedule. We are going to release our bidding documents on September 19th. So as Pat and John Jacobson have said, concrete's already gone out, dirt work's already gone out. As you see, we're moving dirt. But the actual building envelope itself is still yet to be bid, and that'll go out on September 19th. So we have 7 more days to cross our dot our I's and cross our T's and do all our checks and balances for the umpteenth time. So our team is busy doing that. Been working a lot with Pat. We just got concrete numbers in last week.
Yeah.
So the concrete has bid, got favorable numbers. Those came in under budget, under what we had what we predicted, along with the site package that happened a little bit ago, a month ago. McPherson is actually going to self-perform the concrete work, so they won the bid for it, which is actually a benefit to us because they've been through this process with us and seen all the drawings. There's really no surprises to them as they bid the concrete. So that'll be pretty nice for us to work with. They know what's coming. So, other construction updates?
Well, I think as everybody saw, we're moving a lot of dirt. Going to continue grading operations for probably the next 2 to 3 weeks, and then we'll start in the foundations. Rebar's order, working on getting anchor bolts ordered, mixed designs. There's lots of submittals that need to go through Megan's office to get through. So we're in that process right now. For the next 60 or 90 days, I mean, there'll be a lot of activity, but you won't see much because most of it's underground or at the ground level. But after that, you'll start seeing it come out of the ground. The other thing we're working on is site utilities. They should start, storm sewer work should start in 3 or 4 weeks. Hopefully we're waiting on some storm sewer pipe, storm sewer structures, things like that. So still quite a bit of dirt to move, but our subcontractor is doing really well. We're happy with the progress so far. What else? We'll get drawings the end of next week, and yeah, we'll put out bid packages for the remainder of the high school building, and those bids will be in mid-October.
And just a reminder for you guys, we did pull the athletic buildings, like the actual concession stand that goes to the football stadium and some of the press box, like the dugouts, out of the main building package. That will allow some smaller local contractors the opportunity to bid, because most local contractors can't bond a $53 million high school. So it'll allow some other people to get, so we won't have some of those buildings, but all of our fields are still in the building package and we'll be going and progressing. So.
We've got pretty good local participation just on the first 2 bid packages. There's local companies, 2 local excavators and a local concrete company bid already, so just the first 2. So.
Go ahead, Randy.
Well, so the board knows, Pat, John Jacobson gave me credit for that flow chart, but Pat's the one that actually does that work. And we're really proud of Pat. He's doing a good job. But I do have a question,
Sure.
and the board might be wondering, any anticipated date on 100% drawings that John mentioned, that we're at 90%?
Well, those will be submitted next, at the end of next week.
September 19th is when we release the 100% bid package.
Okay. So him not knowing, you got to know first. So that's a good thing, but 100% September 19th.
What's happening with all the dirt?
Well,
Are you hauling it off somewhere, or does it just change location?
No, it's, the civil engineers have done a pretty good job. It should be what they call a balanced site. So there's a lot of cut, dirt we're removing, but then it goes to another location as fill. So, for instance, we're looking at 300,000 yards of cut, but we should be at 300,000 yards of fill. So there should be none leaving, none need to be hauled. And actually, it's a little on the heavy side. We may have a little bit extra, but we've got some places that we can use that at the end. It'd be better to have extra than have all of the dirt. So
Okay.
it should be balanced pretty close.
Okay, neat. Neat.
Any other questions?
Any questions?
We hope everybody has a fun time exploring the model, so make sure you see what it is.
We won't touch.
It's very tempting, I know. I just want to feel those contours.
I don't think that's the siding. No.
So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, Randy. 4.1 vehicle acquisition.
Well, I talked to some of the board members a little bit about our transportation needs, and, as we grow and we expand, we've talked about specials transporting during the day. It's a lot more cost effective to use a Suburban. We have one Suburban, it's about 160,000 miles on it. It's kind of, we had a teacher wanted to take it to Maryland or something a couple of summers ago. We said no, but for some trip. But we need a couple of vehicles, and typically what happens is you have to order them when school districts buy them. And you have to go through a bidding process, or you have to wait for the state bid. And the state bid doesn't come out until October. And we have needs now. And what kind of helps us in that process would be a lease purchase agreement. So what we did is we secured bids. What's the state bid? That kind of thing. Got really close on it. And currently I have bid for two of them would be, actually it's about 66,900. I put in the motion 67,000. What this does is we don't have to bid it, but I knew we do have to go through a lease purchase type process. And the interest rate on that would be about 2.49. Probably it'll go down a little bit because we qualify for tax credit. We're tax qualified, and what that means to a bank is that they don't have to pay tax on the income that they make on it. And that gets us a little better interest rate. So I'm looking at setting one up at 48 months. And did I get the resolution attached to this thing? What I need though is a resolution that authorizes me to engage in this agreement. I'm still going to haggle a little bit, so it may not, it may not happen that way. Or if they tell me they can't get them within a reasonable amount of time, I may wait. The problem with waiting though is this year's state contract will probably be higher than last year's. And these two that we're looking at getting would be 2013 and 2013 prices. And so we could get them a little cheaper that way and they'd still be brand new. But the biggest thing, there's a lot of legal stuff in this. The banks have legal issues they have to go through. I've had Pete go through everything. And it would end if the board passes a resolution to authorize me to engage into a lease purchase contract with Exchange National Bank. Then the next piece I need to get is an attorney opinion that it's kosher and so forth, which we would do if the board wants to pass that resolution. So basically what I'm asking for is a resolution that will authorize me to enter into a lease purchase agreement not to exceed $67,000 for two 2013 Suburbans, which they have matched, pretty much matched the current state contract price on that. Then, services, why would we do this? Well, we have new kinds of students that like to not only come over for one class, but as you heard last board meeting, some of them want to go back and be in band, and then some want to come back and be in geometry, and those kinds of things. So we have this thing going on, which I think are great things. And we're not quite ready for in-servicing teachers to do it online and those kind of things. Some classes don't fit that mode. It's very difficult to teach chemistry online and some other classes. Foreign language is a good fit for online courses, those kind of things. But the other thing is it's much cheaper, and the driver can be an employee that's on our insurance list. Driving one child, two children, three children over to the high school in Suburban, they don't have to be CDL and all that. So we save money there. And actually, sometimes we have volunteers. They're during their work day, but they say, hey, I'll drive them over, you know. Some of our bus drivers have actually volunteered, but you still have that cost of gas, and they're big vehicles just to go 0.4 miles, you know, that kind of thing. So that's kind of what I'm after. I'm not quite there yet, but I really can't move on this or proceed without a resolution authorizing me. Remember, anything over 20,000 has to be bid. The exception is a lease purchase agreement. And so that's kind of why I'm leaning toward this.
So what do you do with the old ones then?
Well, I'm glad you asked, because that red one still has, in my opinion, some good miles on it. And you know, when you put something up as that people bid on and so forth, legally we have to discard property, and if we're going to sell it, it has to be a closed bid. You might get $100 for it, $200 out of it, but you know what? We're hauling paper all the time. We're hauling supplies, paper towels, those kinds of things. And when it rains, that's a real problem in a pickup. And so we would have an excellent use for the Suburban for tools that we need to keep dry, hauling paper and supplies to their 3 or 4 sites. And so rather than dispose of it, my recommendation would be to keep it. And you have a third vehicle that if you need, because we've already had one event where we had 0 vehicles available and one more request to go to Topeka, or to go to Wichita, I think it was. And so it gives us another plan.
Another option.
Yeah, I have to tell you, in Suburban or in Marysville, I had 6 Suburbans. And because they're just more flexible. And of course we had twice the mileage there. But when I had one student who needed to ride to school, totally away from all the other routes, the Suburban was a good option. You know, a driver in a Suburban, you save gas and all those things. So it gives us more flexibility. We haven't bought a vehicle for this kind of purpose in quite a while. We bought a Ford van, I think, in 06, 07, and it's time. We're growing, we have more demands.
So the advantage of a lease purchase is just timing.
Right.
The economics are going to cost us a little bit more upfront because it's financed, but the 2013 rate that the state may get may well offset that anyway.
It may. Now, I could be wrong. The new contract, what if they came in less? But I know it won't be significantly less. It's an option. And the other thing is it's an option to buy from, you know, everything in Leavenworth Lansing is local business to me. So it's an option to buy locally rather than from a dealership in Wichita or Topeka too. So I look at that as a benefit as well from that. But the resolution, you know, can be as presented. And I got a good clean copy. I'll need your signature
Okay.
on it. And other questions about the Suburbans?
Is it an advantage, like, over the 15-passenger van? I mean, or is that a cost factor?
It's actually not legal to transport over, I believe it's 10 students without a CDL. And so then you defeat the purpose of it. In '97, I actually bought a 15-passenger van at the district I was at before the law changed. And we could haul 12 kids, 13 kids with anyone with a driver's license and a good driving record. They changed the law. And when they changed it, this is kind of trivia, if you already owned the van, you could continue with it. But if you bought a new one, the law applied. And so it was kind of interesting the way that. Now, I will tell you why, some people will ask, well, why not this kind of vehicle, this kind of vehicle? Look at every school district's vehicles out there, and the majority of them will be Suburbans. And part of it is they're easier to drive, in many people's opinion. They're a little lower to the ground than, say, the tall van type, which is a better ride and so forth. I like the Suburbans. I also always recommend white, not red. And white is the most common, and it's usually cheaper, instead of getting red. Plus, our letters show up better in white.
I'd probably make a motion to accept the resolution as presented then.
Second? Any further questions or discussions? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Very good. Item 5 here, Community Relations Report, Director Report, Technology Report. Any questions on those items? Any questions on number 6, Curriculum and Instruction, the Administrative Reports? All right. Randy, you want to talk about the adult school lunch?
One of the things with school lunch is, from sometimes in a year we'll raise a student lunch. And the law is that we have to break even. And otherwise, the federal and state subsidies are buying people who don't qualify for free and reduced lunch as part of the lunch. And that's kind of a paraphrase of why it works this way. Well, when we looked, we recommended no increases last summer, I think. When we looked at it, we're a little bit off. And so I'm recommending a nickel on the adult lunches to keep us in that margin where we don't jeopardize federal and state funding for our lunch program.
Any more questions about that? I move that we increase the adult lunch from $3.25 to $3.30 as presented.
Second.
Any further question or discussions? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Mr. Meyer, would you like to talk about your trip?
Yeah.
And he's got a helper.
Good evening.
Who's your helper, Dustin?
This is Alyssa Acevedo. She's my vice president of our chapter, and she's also the Kansas State reporter for the state chapter. So, as our marketing club, DECA, gets larger and more involved, the kids are wanting more knowledge and to go to more conferences to learn more about business and network with other states and chapters. So this year, they would like to go to the Central Region Leadership Conference that's in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, in December. Tough month for Milwaukee. Up there, probably. But they want to go and go to all the little sessions that they have on sports entertainment, entrepreneurship, technology, and then also to network with the other states. Alyssa's actually considering next year, because she can't do it until she's a senior, running for a national office. So networking with other chapters in our region would benefit her next year as well. So we're thinking about driving up to cut the cost down a little bit, and so we'd only be able to take six students with us up there.
How are you going to pick the 6?
Well, they actually have a deadline by Friday to get first payment in because we try to get the early bird special to save them some money on registration. So I guess the first 6 that show me, bring me in some money, and we gotta look at their grades as well because they can't be on the DF list in order to travel with us. With that.
The DF list apply when they hand you the check or
Yes.
in December when they leave?
When they get the check, and then on another December, I'll check them as well.
Okay.
So we keep up the grades.
If you drive up, you're going to Wisconsin in December, what is your contingency plan for inclement weather to make driving difficult between here and there?
We are thinking about the inclement weather and trying to do a little extra fundraising in case we have to stay an extra night.
Or maybe go to an airplane?
We are thinking, we looked at the airplane possibility as well. If we did do that, it would increase their costs $75 or so. So we'll look at that as well. Already figured that, but they're really pushing me to drive so we can have more time to bond. We're driving me crazy with our one to do it.
Well, there may be a Suburban.
Yeah, you could break in a new Suburban.
Any further questions for Mr. Myers? I think it's a great idea. You know, I think getting kids around leadership is always a good thing. I think we need to do more of that. So if you want to bring more trips like this, I'm open ears to that. That's good. So I move that we approve the DECA trip to the Central Region Leadership Conference in Milwaukee as presented.
Second.
Any further question or discussions? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Very good. Thank you.
Good for you, Alyssa.
So, do you want to talk about the board retreat or you want me to?
Well, I can start.
Okay.
We looked at many dates to try to get the board together and have our retreat and so forth. And then Dr. Whitlow and I, in our emails and so forth, we finally thought if we plan it out far enough where everybody can plan and lock it into their calendar, we would be able to, get everyone there. You know, we know things happen, and there's always a conflict, with somebody. So we set this up for November the 14th, and basically it can be, it's kind of twofold, the purpose. We'll start with board leadership type training for a while, and then what he plans to do is present a strategic planning process. We're kind of on the end of the facility one that we did and so forth, and this would be the beginning of a new one, which would be a different kind, less emphasis on facilities and more emphasis on community relations and those kinds of things. And so it'd be a precursor to a pretty big endeavor of strategic planning, which would go back to more community meetings and doing all kinds of training and involving employees and so forth. They have a pretty good model. I'm familiar with a lot of strategic planning models. It's just, they're all pretty good. They're all the same, but they're all different kind of thing. And since this is the year that we're promoting KASB, I thought, well, let's use them. And so that's kind of how it evolved. And then Dr. Whitlow, you can share other things we've talked about.
I think what Randy said is exactly true. I like this idea of looking ahead. I think Randy is probably 5 or 6 years ahead of where we are, and I think we need to do a little bit to catch up to him a little bit. A few of us won't be on the board in a couple years, and those of you that are remaining need to have that skill to keep up with him. And I don't think he's slowing down at his age, so.
That's debatable.
So, I think this is, did you say that's debatable? But I think this idea of culture, leadership, continuous improvement, as we think about a school district and we think about the board, makes absolute logical sense. So, we invite the administrators to these things, and I think this is just going to be a good plan. So, I move that we have our board retreat on November 14th at 6 PM. Any questions or discussions? All in favor?
Aye.
Good. I would like to ask our culinary teacher if he may provide some little snacks that evening.
If
Maybe
we
maybe
can't make
the
that
Lansing
happen,
challenge or
we'll
something.
bring in good food and then we'll lie and say, no.
I think I'd know.
Yeah.
That's funny. 7.4, City of Lansing Benefit District. So it's kind of a late addition. I think you all have a copy of that. I think this kind of clarifies what John was talking about in terms of the improvement district and the benefit district that requires our input to the developments on the site with traffic signals and the walking trail and all of those little different things. Is that fair?
Just a couple of things, side notes, real quick. You may be approached by the cost. Why are we, our cost on it, like the bridge, maybe $500,000 or something like that. Wasn't it done, about $500,000? And these are more costs, and it would be about the same, about $500,000. Well, it's 1.7 plus million dollars that we're going to split with the city. And if we didn't do this, and this is what I really want you to know, we're going to spend that money anyway from the things they're agreeing to relinquish. Because there are park and rec type fees. You got over $500,000 in that. You got perimeter fees that the city has in their regs that are so much per linear foot of the frontage of the property. And they use those kinds of things. Cities, municipalities all do it for road repair, maintenance, upkeep, those kind of things. They're relinquishing all of that. So don't think that we're spending more money. We're actually just trading out what we would spend anyway. And the best news of the day is by doing this, and I said it earlier, is we're not spending bond money. Because if we didn't have this, we would be spending about the same amount of money, but we'd be using bond money, which takes away from, in my mind, the students. So if you get approached by the public about another agreement, it's just like the bridge. And infrastructure is infrastructure. Whether it's a bridge, you can see a bridge. You can't see, sanitary water, wastewater lines, but it's the same concept. It's more infrastructure, and it will be to the betterment of the entire community. So that's my little 2 cents.
Any questions for Randy on that?
Well, I'm sure that our attorney has looked
Oh, yeah.
at this and
Their attorney and my attorney and
got to know each other very well.
between the city and then and us, and I don't know if the 2 attorneys ever talked, but the emails became very difficult to keep track of because our attorney would send it back with all of his notes, and then the mayor would send with his notes, and then John Young, and it became this big thing. But I've read it about 3 times, and I'm comfortable. The 2 years to get the trail done, it bothered me a little bit, but setting goals sometimes makes sure you get things done. The reason it bothered me is Nineveh and the city and some of us are still actively pursuing grants that will pay for that part. And so when it says we'll build this trail, 2 years, what if I don't get the grant? Well, sometimes a goal, a deadline is a good thing to have. And so that was really the only heartburn I had on the whole agreement, was that 2 year.
I move that we approve the Lansing petition and agreement to create the improvement district as presented.
Seconded.
Any question or discussions? All in favor? Aye. All opposed? One opposed? Okay. Executive session 8.1, I move that we enter executive session at 8:40 to last 20 minutes for the purposes to discuss non-elected personnel, matters affecting students, confidential financial data, consultation with attorney, and negotiations.
Can you change that to 7:40?
Say again? Oh, yeah. It's 7:40. Okay,
Thank you.
excuse me, Danielle.
Later we're
Any
talking.
question or discussion? All in favor? Aye. All opposed? I move that we accept the resignation of Jessica Harrison Moorhead as the middle school girls